recording. And let me give you the controls. And I'm so happy you guys could be here because this genre is jumping off of the shelves in my library program. And I'm just like really geeked that you guys are here so I could tell my students, guess who I saw? You know, I love to do that with my students. All right. So trying to give you control. There we go. You're now the host. Go ahead.
Okay. Going to
You're a little low too.
All right. Low
Much
and
better.
volume?
Yeah,
Okay,
much better. I can hear you better and I can see your screen.
Great. It's all working. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us at Boss Librarian, PD, and Casey. Thank you so much for welcoming us on board as a sponsor at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. I am so lucky today to be joined by Dhonielle, Clayton, and Julian, Randall to discuss middle grade fantasy and why it is so crucial to constantly refresh this kid-friendly genre and collections. I'll keep introductions short to leave as much time for conversation as possible, but Julian is a living queer Black poet from Chicago. His poetry and essays are published in the New York Times Magazine, Poetry and Vibe. He holds an MFA in poetry from Ole Miss and has previously worked as a youth mentor teaching writing workshops to children under house arrest or on house arrest. Pilar Ramirez in Escape from Zaffa was his debut children's novel. And earlier this year, we were so excited to publish this sequel, Pilar Ramirez and the Course of San Zanon. Dhonielle Clayton hails from Washington, D.C., the suburbs on the Maryland side. She is the New York Times bestselling author of The Marvelers, the Bell series, Shattered Midnight, co-author of Blackout, and the co-author of The Rumor Game and the Tiny Pretty Things duology, now a Netflix original series. She taught secondary school for several years, and she's really, you know, with your people, Dhonielle, you're a former elementary, middle school librarian, and is also, of course, the COO of the nonprofit We Need Diverse Books, president of Cake Creative. And she is always, you know, I think just such a valuable voice to have in these spaces. And so thank you both for having us, for joining us today. I wanted to start by giving you both an opportunity to ground us a little bit into really amazing additions to the middle grade fantasy space with The Marvelers and Pilar Ramirez. Julian, over to you first. Can you introduce us to Pilar? And I'm so sorry about my voice, everyone. I've got a really weird daycare illness.
No worries. Hi, can everybody hear me? Everybody good? Cool. Thank you so much for the introduction, Mary. Thank you so much for having us, everybody, Boss Librarian, PD. Yeah, so my name is Julian Randall. I get to be the author of Pilar Ramirez and the Escape from Zaffa, which follows 12-year-old Pilar Ramirez, who is a Black Dominicana from the exact same block in Chicago that I am from. She's from Logan Square. And so she is an aspiring documentary filmmaker who's been trying to put together a film about her cousin who disappeared 50 years ago during the Trujillato, which dominated the Dominican Republic from 1930 to 1961. So after these 31 years of dictatorship, she's interviewing her mommy, she's interviewing her abuela, but she's not making a whole lot of progress, as is often the case when we're trying to interview older family members about horrible things that have happened to them in their lives. But she's been trying to figure out what happened to her cousin who disappeared 50 years ago, right? So one magical day, she gets a text from her sister, Lorena. Hey, there's a professor at the University of Chicago, does the exact same kind of research. Do you want to meet? She says, girl, I'm already on the L. She pulls up. She's so excited. She's got her camera. She's got her backpack. She's got her favorite shoes. Everything's all good except for one problem. Dude's not there. She opens the door and all that's inside is a bunch of papers and folders and files, which normally would break her heart if not for the fact that among those papers, folders, and files, one folder with her cousin's exact name and date of disappearance on it, which she opens up to find that there's only one blank sheet of paper inside, which would break her heart again, if not for plot twist number one. The minute that she touches that blank sheet of paper, she is whisked off to the other side, finds herself in the magical land of Zaffa, which it has been, plot twist number two, dominated by the Dominican boogeyman El Cuco for hundreds of years, because plot twist number three in this land of Dominican mythos and magic, El Cuco and Trujillo, homies, allies, besties, if you will, which leads us to our fourth and final plot twist. El Cuco's the one who's had her cousin this entire time. So now she has to find her power, find her history, and find her way back home if she's ever going to have a chance of saving Natasha. And then book 2 happens 1 year later.
Thanks so much, Julian. You know how obsessed I am with these books. Dhonielle, if you could introduce us to the Marvelers, that would be great.
Well, my introduction is not as magical as Julian, so let me try to come behind that. But the Marvelers really is my love letter to my library, to my students, and it is about a young girl named Ella Durand, and she comes from a community of people called conjurers. But the other magical group in my world are called Marvelers, and Marvelers are a little suspicious of conjurers. Their magic is just a little different. However, for the first time, Marvelers are opening up their magic school, which is a magic school in the sky that goes all over the world. And it's basically the future of magic school. It's what happens when every kid in the world has magic and practices it. And she gets to go for the first time. And she has to grapple with what is it like to be the first of her community to enter in a space where people have a lot of strong feelings about her magic and where she's come from. And also she's discovering secrets about this magic school that have deep roots in her own community. And so the Marveler sort of sets up the world, the traveling magic school, and all the characters. And book 2 takes us into her second year at the magic school. But also in this book, it's told in found documents because I do like being able to have a conversation about newspapers and primary sources. And it goes into sort of the history of what happens when we start manipulating those things. So I'm really excited to be here and so thrilled.
Thanks so much, Dhonielle. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so everyone can just focus on this conversation. Before we dive in more, I was hoping you could share a little bit about how you've seen the middle grade fantasy space change between when you were reading as a young person and when you're writing today. And by all means, if anyone has any favorite middle grade fantasy, feel free to drop those in the chat for suggestions for the group. But I'd love to hear from you both on that note.
Sure. Julian, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the thing is that in terms of how we've seen it change, it's about like the diversity of cultures that we're seeing, absolutely. But I think that also I wanted to speak to the fact that like magic is often inherited in all of the kind of like middle grade magical fantasies that I kind of came up on. And so that meant that power was something that you inherited. It wasn't necessarily something that you acquired. It was something that came to you as a birthright. And one of the things that's been really lovely, and it's the thing that always makes me really emotional while I'm watching Dhonielle like talk about the Marvelers, right? Is this idea of what if every kid in the world had magic? Because so many of us grow up with like the Harry Potters of the world. And I remember distinctly asking my mom, are there any Black wizards? Are there any Jewish wizards? Where would they be? Like, why are they not also at the school? Why are we not at the school is the thing that I did not have the grammar or the experience to know that that's what I was trying to ask, right? And so to get to be part of this generation that writes to kids that see that magic is everywhere and inherent, but also like in the world that you can touch and see and collaborate with is just really special.
Absolutely. And I think picking up off of what Julian said is when I grew up, there were very few books that featured Black kids having magical adventures, or even other kids of color, and even queer kids, disabled kids, etc. And so when I became a librarian, I got really, really frustrated because my students' literacy rates and their relationship with literature was affected because they couldn't see themselves. So the only reason why I wrote The Marvelers was because many of my students said, hey, I've read Harry Potter and where am I? I don't exist. What's up with that? Are there magic school books where there are kids that speak multiple languages, that come from different kinds of backgrounds, et cetera? And I couldn't find anything. And so everyone told me not to write this book. They said that there is no space in the magic school canon because of the shadow of Harry Potter. Nobody wants to move on from that. And I said, well, I'm going to prove you wrong, because there are millions of children in this world who don't have a magic school that they get an invitation to. And so what I've seen is definitely an opening up of who is able to write about magic and feature these sort of characters. But what I want to see is that these characters and these stories get circulation, right? They get more than trotted out during the respective history months, right? Because there are certain titles that are always put forth in a child's hand, and the rest of us sort of get to be niche. We get to be the flavor of the month. And so what I would like to see is that some kid who is obsessed with, you know, Percy Jackson or Harry Potter can also receive titles that can speak to the magic of those things and open up their reading. I know how hard it is to get kids to move on from certain titles, but we also have to give other books a shot. That means that we as librarians have to read them so that we can speak about them.
I was just about to say, Dhonielle, before we move on to the next question, do you have any suggestions for librarians on how to sort of push a reader forward into the next series?
I think it's hard, but I think what you can do is it's the same things that we were doing when books, you know, when Percy Jackson and Harry Potter were at their peak, right? We were like decorating our library to be themed in that way. We were dressing up as the characters. We were pulling things out of the novel and making bits and pieces to make our libraries look like that. I know I was doing that to create an immersive world. We have to be able to do that for other books so that our next generation of readers can find other entry points into magical worlds that are more reflective of their backgrounds and their neighbors and their family members and other people in their community. Otherwise, the rest of us I will only get trotted out and Julian will only get trotted out during February, right? Or September, right? So it's one of those things where if we don't do it, we're not going to create a bridge between, you know, kids only do what they see. So if they see you reading these books and being excited about them, creating bulletin boards and displays and all kinds of cool stuff, then they will get excited. We will have to lead them.
That's great. Thank you. Julian, go ahead.
Oh no, these were just like kind of random thoughts of mine, but I was thinking about how many of the contemporary like new middle grade offerings are also like set at least somewhat in our world in terms of kids who are like from a place and the books are in love with that place. One of the things that I love about the Marvelous is that like Ella does come from a very rich tradition of Southern Black people, right? In terms of all of that, and in terms of how like Pilar is from same block in Chicago that I am from, and how I'm able to see that make a connection with different kids, right? So even if you set it up as like a little like scavenger hunt, like find a character who you believe would probably be a Bulls fan, and find a character who you believe has probably traveled to more than one country, et cetera, getting them an opportunity to say like, okay, this character is just like you, not just because I'm presuming the interior of your life as like a marginalized student, but also because we live in this same community. This is something that we share, and I see a little bit of you in this character. Set them off on that journey, because kids love to complete things. They're born completionists.
That is so true. I think that brings up a really good point in terms of place, is that I think both of your works here are so closely intertwined also with the real world. I mean, I know, Julian, we've talked a lot about how you integrated issues that Pilar was dealing with in her own neighborhood in Chicago into the world of Safa. So like what is gained by sort of having these fantasy offerings that are so much more reflective of the young readers world. So how did you think about location when writing these books? I'm sorry, everyone. I will try to speak up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How was I thinking about place? How was I thinking about place? Aside from the fact that I believe that Chicago is the most magical place in the world, it is also, I think, just about like, this is a way that we show as authors that we respect kids' interior lives, right? And as a result, we can create better magic for them because we respect where their power comes from and how they would actually use it. What would compel them to think about it, right? I think that Pilar is able to see that like Logan Square has been changing since she was a baby. It's not just the fact that her best friend has moved, it's the fact that the shape of the street has changed. Like there's new houses and new developments everywhere, and slowly but surely it feels like the music is dropping out of their block a little bit at a time. And so when Pilar slips through this sheet of paper and finds herself in the land of Zafa, like the land used to be covered in this black sand called La Negra. But once Trujillo and El Cuco struck their deal, it started to bleach the sand and the La Negra started to disappear beneath, right? And so La Negra used to carry all of Dominican mythos and memory, and now it's just starting to disappear. Pilar's never been in a magical world before, but she knows what it's like to live somewhere that loved you, and now it's starting to forget that it did. And so she's able to connect with the Zafans off of that, because I think that that's just what kids do. They find something that's like what you're going through in their experience, and they build that bridge naturally. Is when they become adults, and we try and teach them to not do that.
My turn. Same question. Okay. I think for me, working with my students in East Harlem, New York, I was realizing how much of their home lives, how much of their families, how much of like things that they wanted to see in books. And I thought it is time to see more heroes rooted in culture and community, where that culture and community births magic, right? It anchors them. It is their center. However, it is not about the bruises of that community. It's rather that those are a part of the stew that makes them, right? And so Ella is from New Orleans, Louisiana, and so spends a lot of time in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, because that was my childhood. And I wanted to show a very magical Black community that she comes from, and a relationship between that community and this other community, to have a deeper conversation through the lens of fantasy, which is so helpful, about global anti-Blackness and about integration and school segregation. And so I wanted to parallel that and the struggles that my parents had growing up in the 50s and 60s in Mississippi and integrating schools. So I wanted to have that conversation, but location is very important to having that sort of meta-narrative discussion for young people, where it's not historical fiction, but you can find all of the beats of that history if you overlay the plot and the magic on top of it to have a different kind of conversation, because it's still happening right now. And I didn't think that in a magical world, these things would be erased.
Thank you. I think that one thing that your books both do so well is that the magic involves teamwork. I think a lot of previous books in this space have been so much, there's one hero saving the day. And I think that both of these worlds are about so much more than one person. Can you talk about this and how maybe that might impact these students who are, reading these books in libraries to see teamwork reflected?
Sure, I have a lot to say about this, because as a kid, I was a coward. I was a chicken. My childhood nickname is Chicken Little. I was scared of the sky falling out, on me. I was terrified of my own shadow. So like the idea of being a chosen one, having to save the world, absolutely nope. I'm opting out of that. And so Ella is not a hero. She's a person that things are happening to, and she's discovering things, but she has two other best friends that become a little unit. And I believe in the three kids in the trench coat, right? Because that's really, I think, how the world will be saved. It's a bunch of kids coming together and being like, you know what? You adults don't know what you're doing or talking about. You're making a mess. So we're coming together and we're going to take over. And so I really believe that modeling for the next generation, the idea of teamwork, collaboration, and I come from a community where collaboration and community is the way to succeed. It's the only way to move forward, is as a unit. We are together. We can argue, we can fuss, but we are moving together in order to help the unit versus the individual. So I just didn't grow up in an individualistic household. I grew up in a more collectivist culture and community. And so I wanted to mirror that in my work. And there are so many chosen ones, right? And I wanted to do something different creatively. It just didn't feel natural to me to think that just one person, one kid, one 11-year-old was going to fix it all. No, several of them, because they all have talents. So I have strong opinions about the three kids in a trench coat doing the thing, saving the world.
See, now I can't wait for that. I can't wait for those kids. I can't wait for that trench coat. I hope it's purple.
I'll make sure.
Okay, so yeah, I think on my end, it's gonna sound like I'm not answering your question, but I guess I have to start by talking a little bit about my mom. My mom is one of 4 sisters. She is the Dominican side of my family. And so the first time that I ever learned where we came from, I stumbled downstairs, I'm 8 years old, and I see my mom crying. And it's the first time that I've ever seen her cry. And what's more, she's crying over a book. So now I'm like double confused. So I ask her what she's reading, and she says, this is this called In the Time of the Butterflies. This is the story of the 4 Mirabal sisters. And they were the ones who fought back against the man who kicked your abuelo off the island. Now there's like 3 bombshell pieces of information in that sentence. Man who kicked my abuelo off the island, there was a fight, there were 4, but to me, it was also the fact that there were 4 sisters, that I'd always heard my mom passing this power and these words that sounded like magic between them. And so my mom could say something in Spanish in Chicago and her sister felt better in New York. And so that was how I learned that our magic always came from people coming and working together. And so for Pilar to be like, you know, part of this tradition, and like she always just like manifested to me as like this Black Dominicana who will be part of this long tradition of like powerful, amazing Dominican women who stood up and said, this deserves to be different. We deserve to be free. It didn't make sense for it to be only her who was doing it, because that's not how resistance movements prosper. That's not how communities prosper. It comes together, and you know, there's times where she needs to be picked up and there's times where she picks the other person up, and that's how loyalty is built. So ultimately, it made sense that the magic of this world would kind of command the same way. And you know, not to spoil anything, but the antagonist of the sequel is somebody who does not seem to understand that. She resents the fact that the magic is collaborative, and that is ultimately part of her downfall. So yeah, it's all about just like community. How do we build magic that's for community? Because that's what it's always been, you know? Power, magic without community is just power.
Perfectly said, Julian. I think, you know, what impact do you think it will have on students to see magic that is more inclusive on the shelves, to see that, you know, magic that is not with a team is just power. You know, how are we impacted as an audience when only one kind of magic is being recommended again and again?
And also only one type of kid gets to save the
Yes.
world. And so these books are invitations to young people to say that you belong in books. You belong in books with magic. You belong in books that like turn into amazing big TV shows that are full of explosions and like beautiful iconography, right? Because this is a huge problem. My students didn't believe that they belonged in books, especially not books with magic, because so much of what was given had no kids that looked like them from communities like them, that spoke different languages, that were from here and there and everywhere. And so I think that it is building the next generation of readers. It is helping with literacy rates and creating just adults who will read, who also have a sense of self to know that they deserve to have magical existences and also to see their communities as beautiful with all of those things. And so I think that it's super important. Super important. Otherwise, we won't have a next generation of writers either, if they're not allowed to see templates. We're lucky that Julian and I made it, because from just resistance of saying, you know what, I can't find myself on these pages, but I'm going to write myself into existence. And now we've given the opportunity to really give a roadmap, I think, to young people to help them find their way through.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I couldn't say any of that better. The other thing that I would want to add on is like, yeah, and the thing is, we're already seeing that next generation of writers happening. Because like, I got on a school visit recently when we were doing the Pilar 2 tour and whatnot. So I come in and I'm like, I'm signing these books, and there's this one kid, I can see him, like he's like 3 people behind, but he's like just glaring daggers at me. And it's like, all of you have been glared at, I would imagine, by an 8-year-old at some point. You feel like doubly wrong. It's like, how are you so young and yet so opposed to me? What is happening? And so he finally gets to the front of the line. He like gives me his book, and I'm like, hey man, what's up? And he says, you stole my book. And I was like, excuse me? What do you mean? And so he very like meticulously, not in a mean-spirited way, but very meticulously walks me through the fact that like, beat for beat, he had come up on his own with a story like Pilar about what had happened to his family in Ecuador on their way here. And so the thing is that like, that was not a conversation I ever got to have as a kid. The models that we are building are making change now, and they are making change for the future. And that starts with all of you, with the way that you put these books in these students' hands so that they can come and harass us in our signing lines. And that is exactly what we love to see in the world.
Love it. We love it.
I love that anecdote so much, Julian, and I can't wait to see what that kid writes. We only have a few minutes left, so I just want to be conscious of that. Before we hand it back over.
No. Take your time. We're enjoying this.
Okay, thanks so much. I was just going to say, you both obviously, are, writing amazing works in this space. What were your, are there other areas where you could recommend the librarians in the audience today for discovering other works like this? Like who are some of your favorite authors writing middle grade magic?
Julian, I'll let you go first because I'm a former librarian, so I come ready. I'm about to lay it out. So I'm gonna let you get yours in first because you're gonna take some of mine and then I'll finish it up.
That's real. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take my boy Kwame off the board. Incredible Tristan Strong series, and now I don't remember, like he showed me the cover, which I don't know if I was supposed to see, but I don't care.
You're not supposed to see it. You're not supposed to announce it.
The next thing that's coming is great. It's really exciting, and you should absolutely set up a Google alert about it. That would be great. But yes. Him, Claudia Bell Ortega, just like, I'm trying to think like off the top of my head. Wow, yeah, no. Marco Shiro, like just came out, has been absolutely incredible. There's that one's long forthcoming, but Leslie Adame is an incredible author, incredibly sweet person. Can't say enough great things about the book that she has forthcoming. So I'm really excited about that. And those will be my three so that we can let the GOAT take it.
So we've got Kwame Mbalia's Tristan Strong series and Last Gate of the Emperor series. You also did Claribel A. Ortega's Witchling series. I'm going to throw in Zoretta Cordova's Valentina Salazar is Not a Monster Hunter and The Way to Rio Luna. I'm going to also throw in Natalie C. Parker's The Devouring Wolf, Queer Werewolves. Amazing. There's so much good stuff coming out of middle grade that is super exciting. And just presents a beautiful landscape for new storytelling. You also said Marco Shiro's The Insiders, which is just incredible. Love it so much. I think people are really rewriting and writing themselves and their young selves in. Let's see, look, as a librarian, I'm like, here's my scroll of like, children do read. You have H.D. Hunter's Futureland series, which is about a kid in a futuristic theme park that goes all over the world, and he's dealing with robots and having to go to school with real kids for the first time. It's amazing. Check it out. I can stop now, but like, there are so many. I wish I could give you like 50.
H.D. Hunter is one of my favorite writers all time.
My buddy.
All time. Can't say enough good things about him.
I'll work on adding a list into the notes document for day 2, so you all have access to that. But thank you both so much. I know I put you on the spot there. Thank you. We're so grateful for your time today. And Casey Boyd, thank you for welcoming us into this event. We're so thrilled to be here.
No, thank you. And I just want to say that I'm just so glad that you all are here and you're writing, because I'm going into my 25th year working as a school librarian, and it's always been dismal, especially in this genre, just writers of color, period. And especially in the middle grades. And I teach middle school, so it's a struggle to find great books and everything. And it's just like, it's a beautiful plethora of titles that are out here. I'm glad you guys are writing specifically for this age group. Laura knows they need it. I love teaching middle school, but boy, they real opinionated on the, any and everything. But your books constantly fly off the shelves, especially that Bell series. Oh my goodness, it's like I can't keep it. But I'm so happy to hear that new books are being produced. They're coming out, and you're also getting previews of other authors' books and everything. You can kind of like drop a little tea, for us, because we're all big advocates. But thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Many of our librarians are back in session right now. They started school again, and they're bummed out because they are, tied in with work obligations. But one of the things is the beauty about this back to school PD is that when we release the recordings, they really go off the chain. And I'm so happy that we were able to, just witness your conversation this evening. So thank you. And also thank you for the donations to all the presenters. Really appreciate that.
And thank you for the work that you do, and all the librarians, wherever you're tuning in from. You are on the front lines of this crisis that we have, and we are sending you our love and our strength, and we align with you, and we are at your back, like at the ready. I'm like, you have my axe, I'm ready to go. So thank you for this work. It's tireless, it's thankless, but
yes, Lord, it is.
Out of my heart.
Real
and middle school kids. Woo!
Yeah, I know. I've taught all grade levels, but middle school is my favorite because they so doggone messy and they funny. That's how I just get my joy in every day. I'm sorry, I was running my mouth so much. Any questions from the audience? Can you quickly put something in the Q&A if you have a question for our guests? I see something. Will a book and author list? Oh, it slid up.
Yeah, I think people are just hoping to get a list of the recommendations that Dhonielle and Julian shared, and I'm happy to add those into the day 2 notes so that everyone has access to that.
Okay.
Mary, can I send you a few more too?
I'll email.
Okay. I stay ready with my list. I'll copy and paste. It'll be
Thank
about
you.
25 bucks.
Yeah, and I'm just listening to y'all. I'm like, I got family from New Orleans, and I'm, originally from Chicago. You said Logan Square. I looked up like, whoa, okay, homie. All right. So this is just great to hear. So hold on. We have something in the Q&A. Let's see if I can open it up. Oh, I think I'm going to have to reclaim as host. So hold on a minute.
Yeah, I see there's a question from Katie McNamara. Thoughts on these wonderful books for high school, fantasy for YA. I can also, I've over to you both, of course, but I can always add that into the document as well.
Okay.
YA is spoiled for choice now in terms of there's so much fantasy for YA. So happy to send through some great recommendations. A lot of the people we listed also do YA as well. I have a YA fantasy and YA historical fantasy, so happy to send through some.
And you all know, as authors, we have adults that are reading these books just as fast as the kids. So it's just a matter of say, hey, y'all need to check out some of these new releases, and that'll get them excited. Was this the same one? Oh, okay. Meant books shared. Okay, she just wanted to clarify. Meant the books shared. So that's what.
No, those are for middle school. So yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I like to think they've written to the middle schoolers, enjoyable by all, but written specifically to my 8 to 12s, my 8 to 12s.
8 to 12s, yeah.
Right.
And they need that fantasy, and the giving something to push them into using their imagination and just, do a little dreaming too, and just having some fun at the same time. Hey, before you all log off, can you please tell everyone how we can follow you on any of the social media channels, including the channel now formerly known as Twitter?
Look, I deleted my Twitter account. I'm so sorry. I couldn't take it anymore. I know I deleted it. But I am on Threads at Brown Bookworm. I'm on Instagram at Brown Bookworm, and on whatever Blue Sky is. I'm over there too. Do I miss Twitter? I miss you all. Yes, absolutely. But and I have a newsletter where I give away tons of books. I literally am about to announce a massive giveaway for librarians where I'm going to be giving away class sets in every single state in America. And
Oh,
so
wow.
please follow me so that you can get a free set of Marvelers and the Memory Thieves for your classrooms. I'm trying to reach kids in every single state because every single kid deserves to go to magic school and deserves to see themselves as magical. So I gotta make this happen. Even South Dakota, where y'all at? You know what I'm saying? So
That's
I
great.
need, you know what I mean? And giving away some free school visits too. So please
Okay.
try to find me, follow me, swipe, newsletter.
You heard it here. Follow her on Threads now.
Y'all see why I say that she's my hero, right? Y'all see the reason. Y'all see the vision, right? Yes. Okay. So I changed my name to my title, and that's on Threads. The Twitter is not long for this world either, but I do have an Instagram that I'm pretty active on, and that's generally where I get like first things out into the world. And yeah, I am on Threads, and hopefully Threads will soon be on Threads as well.
It needs to get itself together. Give me some
Yeah.
time.
Well, I
Mhm.
tell you. Well, I'm so glad you all able to talk a little longer. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been
Anything for
blessing.
librarians.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Always, yeah,
Happy
always.
Thursday.
Thank
Have
you.
a
Yes.
great weekend. And yeah, we'll put stuff in the notes. So thanks
Alrighty.
for having us.
No, thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop the recording now. Thank you. This was great. I loved it.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty.
Thank you. Bye.